Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for High Velocity Radio.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of High Velocity Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today we have with us Shannan Epps with Brightwork Consulting. Welcome, Shannan.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, before we get too far into things, tell us about Brightwork. How are you serving folks?
Well, we are a healthcare IT firm, and we work with mostly large healthcare systems. We do work with some medium-sized systems as well, but we do a lot of enterprise health IT solutioning. So everything from recommendations and advisory on technology systems to healthcare executives. We do project and program management. We do risk management, risk mitigation, and change management. And as part of COVID, we also did a pivot like everyone else, and we became a Microsoft partner. And so now we're also offering custom Microsoft Teams and modern workplace solutions to healthcare organizations. So
now how did you get into the healthcare IT kind of niche? Like out of all of the consulting you could be doing, how'd you land on that one?
Yeah, that's, well, actually, I myself have been in healthcare IT for almost 20 years, and I just sort of accidentally landed in it. A long time ago. I got my IT start in defense, actually, and did a few years there and then started in healthcare when I moved to Seattle. And so over the years, with my own experience, having led some pretty large healthcare IT projects around the country, I built relationships with former CIOs and strategic advisors and high-end leaders. And so once I was ready to go out on my own, I was able to bring together a team of folks who have the same set of goals, the same mission, the same vision that I do. And so that's how Brightwork came to be.
Now, because healthcare is such a huge kind of beast, and it seems like the rules are always changing. You have government having input there, you have the public, and then you kind of layer on top of this a pandemic. How do you even attack this? Like, are people coming to you with just a wide variety of challenges and needing some sort of a third party expertise in order to help kind of Sherpa them through all of this?
Yes. Yes. And, our business is any consulting business. It's all relationship based. And so, that's, our network is strong. And so that's how, people find us. But yes, most of the time it's, needing a third party, a fresh outside voice, somebody that has that seasoning to provide, advisory services. And then some of the things that we do, like change management and risk management, those just aren't really things that are built into a lot of organizations. And so they really need somebody else to come in and help run that for some of the large projects. And some of the projects that we help lead are things like EHR, electronic health record projects, where they on the very smallest size, they can run 15, 20 million up to, close to $1 billion organizational projects. And so the amount of change management required for those initiatives is pretty significant. But as far as, what you asked, is there a broad array of services? Yes, absolutely. Each one of our clients needs something a little bit different, depending on where they're at.
Is there
and what their challenges are.
Now, is there kind of a common kind of first project that you get asked to do a lot, and then from there it expands based on how well you do that?
It kind of depends. Yes and no. A lot of times we are brought in to do an assessment, and that generally happens when there's some sort of a problem either within a department or within a process that our clients know is a problem, but they may not know exactly what the root cause of the problem is. So we'll come in and do sort of a neutral third-party assessment, identify some of the challenges with people, processes, and the technology in place, and then we'll make a set of recommendations. And oftentimes our clients will ask us to shepherd through some of those solutions and recommendations from there.
So what's an example of a problem that somebody might have that they would call you in on?
A good example of one that for a client that we've been with for a couple of years now, it was a large analytics group, and there were some performance problems within the group, not individual performance problems, but just there was some concern about the quality of the analytics that was being delivered. There was some concern about whether or not the overall department had enough IT rigor and structure in place. So there was a problem with resource load, having enough resources to do the work and knowing whether or not there were enough resources to do the work, having the data to determine that. So just some overall problems. And this was a group that was performing analytics for a very large national board that was making decisions off of those analytics. So it was a pretty critical problem. And so that's what we did. We came in and we did a review of their people, their processes, and their technology. And we found that they didn't have a way to manage the capacity of their resources in a way that gave them enough data to determine whether or not they needed to add people or not. That was one of the problems. We also determined that, for an analytics group, they weren't following some of the gold standard IT processes that would help them get through some of their work in a better way, or that would help them manage the quality of their work in a better way. And they also didn't have a strong governance structure for their department, where, they were able to quickly and effectively determine what initiatives they should take on and what they shouldn't. And so that was resulting in a little bit of, okay, well, we'll just take on everything until we can't, kind of a thing. So no prioritization. And so we delivered an executive report to them after a couple of months of really digging into what was going on. And then from there, we've started kind of chipping away at the challenges ever since, working on capacity management, working on governance and prioritization, working on overall processes.
Now, when you're doing that kind of work, how do the executives that kind of have you do the work have the trust? Like, how do you kind of bridge the gap to come in and you're really getting deep into the organization? So that requires, to me, a lot of trust in you, because now you're poking around in lots of places and you're asking their people some questions that, that might be politically charged or have some ramifications. How do you kind of handle that kind of balance of being, getting, in order to get the information you need to make informed decisions and recommendations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it's an art, and it's something that we're extremely experienced at. It's all in the language that you use. I mean, it includes how you posture a conversation, and back in the days when we could all meet together, it's things like body language and how you approach a group. At the kind of individual level, when you're assessing people as part of a team, for example, we always go in and say, number one, this is not an interview that's going to get you in trouble. We really want to understand what's happening in the department. It's not going to get your manager in trouble. We just want you to have, an avenue to discuss some of the challenges that you see in a confidential way that will go into a broader report. So we really try to build a rapport with folks at the individual level. And at the executive level, it comes down to you build trust over time. It does not happen overnight. You talk to them, you build a relationship. And after a while, they really understand that when you have exposure to multiple enterprises, you end up getting a broad view of how things work it's particularly in healthcare and in healthcare IT. And so I think that's what a lot of our clients appreciate, is that we do have such a broad view on what is concerning healthcare IT executives across the country. And so we have multiple perspectives to bring to the table for our clients.
And then how do you kind of manage the balance between mitigating risk for firms and also being change agents dealing with that kind of massive disruption? These all seem to be kind of things that are opposites to me. I mean, I'm a lay person, so I don't know how all this works, but those seem to be opposites.
In our space, they're actually they're partners. They're very deeply entwined. So if you think about it this way, so a lot of the system implementations that we're involved with have significant impact on users. An electronic health record, if you don't know what that is, it's the software system that your medical record is kept in, and that healthcare providers and nurses and everyone who touches your medical record is in. It runs every part of the business of healthcare, just about every part of the business of healthcare. And so the impact to providers and nurses and, folks in the billing department of the hospital business office, it impacts everyone in a very significant way. So that is a huge risk to how a healthcare system runs. When you it's like going from Microsoft products to all Apple products overnight with one, big bang for a lot of people, sometimes 10,000 people. And it absolutely has the potential to impact patient care, not just from a change and learning perspective, but you've got technical issues that can arise as well. So there's a lot of inherent risk in that. And so we look at it in a couple of different ways. One, managing risk in a project that size is absolutely crucial. You have to have a magnifying glass on all levels of risk that could arise in a project like that. On the change management side, again, because it's such a huge risk, you've really got to be at the ground level with the people that a system change like that is impacting. And one of the ways that you do that is by helping people understand that talking about risk is not a dirty word. Usually when you start to talk about risk mitigation, people feel like, oh, I'm not, I don't want to talk about that, or I don't know if I want to, voice that concern. And so we'll come in, and as part of our change management efforts, that's the first thing we do is educate on the benefits of deep risk mitigation. So we really think that they are hand in hand, and they go together.
So now how, to me, what I'm hearing is that you say that your role is kind of the empathy. You're the empathy executive. Yeah. You have to kind of look at things through the lens of each of the end users and explain to every party that's touching this how each of the other parties might be possibly impacted down the road, and then kind of play out, okay, best case scenario, worst case scenario, and how we're going to deal with this.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe part of what we do. Absolutely. Yes. I think I'm going to use that one.
Now, in your work, how in this field, I would imagine that to be a woman in technology is kind of an outlier, that this isn't a woman-dominated field, that a lot of the people you're dealing with are men in these kind of executive positions?
Yeah, it's interesting. In healthcare, women have been at the leadership helm for a long time. Healthcare has always been a female-rich environment, so having women in leadership positions here is really nothing new. Women in tech in general, I absolutely agree that traditionally there haven't been as many women in technology. I was the only female in my college coding class back in the early 90s. And so we've come a long way since then. The women in healthcare IT leadership, there are plenty of us, but what is I have found interesting is, the healthcare IT consulting business is a big business. There's a lot of firms out there, and there's a lot of firms that have healthcare IT consulting divisions. And in this space, there are not a lot of women leaders. There's a handful of women that I know that are doing healthcare IT business, but very few in this advisory and strategic leadership space.
So then what organizations are you involved with to kind of bring you all together to have kind of that safe forum to share ideas and to be kind of vulnerable on how to deal with some of these big challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are a part of WeBank, but again, healthcare IT is a niche, and so there aren't a lot of other women healthcare IT execs in the WeBank space. For me myself, I have a strong group of women healthcare IT leaders who both serve on Brightworks advisory board and who are part of, my network that I lean on all the time. And there are some incredibly strong healthcare IT female leaders out there in the healthcare enterprises, working for the healthcare systems. There just aren't a lot that have consulting businesses like mine.
And what's been, for you personally, the most rewarding part of this journey?
I think the thing that's been most rewarding is starting to the stuff that we're doing with Microsoft Modern Workplace right now, and the solutions that we're bringing to our clients are really quite meaningful and impactful. And so I think when we can make a difference in how a healthcare IT organization staffs its teams or organizes its teams, that then has a direct impact on the hospital system's bottom line. Healthcare IT spend can be a significant portion of a healthcare system's budget, and can greatly impact margin. And so being able to come up with creative solutions to reduce that impact on the overall bottom line is extremely rewarding for us.
Now, if you had a crystal ball, how are you forecasting into next year when hopefully this pandemic is going to begin to wane?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure that from a financial health perspective and an IT spending perspective, we're going to be in that much different position than we were this year. For some of our clients, while they were okay financially in 2020, they're actually not going to start seeing the financial impacts of the pandemic until this year. Their budgets will be impacted in 2021. And so that'll be interesting. But, with a new administration coming in, I think we're all hoping that some additional incentives will be brought into healthcare. There was a lot of really good work around doing things like making the patient record accessible to all by everyone, and that got put aside. So there's lots of really great work to be done in healthcare. I personally think it's going to be, maybe 2022 before things are really moving along from a budget perspective.
Now, do you think that the pandemic and this reliance on these kind of virtual calls and things like that helped speed up maybe some of this telemedicine and some of these technologies that were maybe kind of available and some people were taking advantage, but this kind of forced the hand and made it more available? More people had to use it and felt comfortable using it?
Absolutely. And, We have a client that we helped, that we were working with. We had an interim CIO, Brightworks CIO there for them when the pandemic first hit. And we got their telehealth system going overnight. This is a rural health system with lots of very remote locations in Alaska, and they absolutely had to rely on telehealth for this. So even systems that were traditionally a little bit resistant to go with telehealth they had to make that move. I think we were heading in that direction before, but the big challenge with telehealth was mostly policy, and unblocking some of the regulatory challenges that would allow for broad telehealth. And so when we talk about adoption of that, I think the pandemic absolutely is going to contribute to unlocking those barriers.
And I think that's going to be an opportunity, especially in those rural areas, for those folks to have access to really specialized care that they may have a difficult time getting in those kind of remote areas. Yeah,
absolutely. That and behavioral health are two big areas where virtual care should make a big impact.
Now, for the folks out there that are a prospective client, what is the pain that they're having right now where the solution is Brightwork?
A lot, it comes down to, one of our focuses right now is helping clients that are being asked to do more with less. And that is pretty much every single healthcare system out there. It impacts, of course, on the clinical side, from physicians to nurses. The nursing and doctor shortage is a real crisis. And I think it's going to be even more of a crisis after the pandemic. But it happens in the IT and the administrative spaces as well. The healthcare system is being asked to do more and more, and to keep up with modern technology, and even to keep up with some of the regulatory requirements. Like you mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, there's tons of regulatory requirements that impact healthcare. And so that is a real challenge, figuring out how to accomplish all the things that need to be done with limited resources. That's where we really shine. That's where we really help.
So if they're in a budget crunch and they don't know the way out, Brightworks the right call to kind of at least brainstorm and have a conversation.
Yep, exactly.
Well, Shannan, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing such important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Now, if somebody wants to learn more, what's the website and the coordinates to get a hold of you or somebody on your team?
Sure. Our website is www.brightworkconsulting.net.
All right.
And you can find me on LinkedIn.
And that's Shannan, Shannan Epps, Epps.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you again for sharing your story.
Thank you so much.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on High Velocity Radio.